people are struggling and looking for answers. God has given you the solution and has called you to leadership. Now it's time to grow and prepare while learning how to use your gifts. Jamal is an experienced leader that uses his gifts to lead change. Now he's sharing what he's learned with you so you can fulfill your leadership assignment. Prepare to be ignited, to lead like a champion. Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to Igniting Champion Leaders Live. I'm so glad that you can join me. Everybody that's watching on the various platforms, those of you listening in the VIP and from on Clubhouse in the Igniting Champion Leaders Club. My name is Jamal Maxsam. I'm an igniter of champion leaders, CEO of Lead Like a Champion, and my assignment is to ignite believers called to leadership in their ability to lead as well as operate in their gifting, in their leadership, so they can fulfill their assignment. So those of you who are watching, I want to encourage you to comment, like, share, and save this video while it's available. Those of you who are listening on Clubhouse, feel free to share, invite some people to the room. Let's get into the discussion. And so a while ago now, I did a live in the Dismantling Spiritualism podcast, and we talked about Disney. One of the things that we talked about was if Disney was filling out its original intent as created by Walt Disney, with recent actions and social and political stances and agenda pushing that has been happening within some of the movies and the cartoon characters kissing and all of those kind of things, how that agenda is being pushed through their movies and really shoved down people's throats. It's one thing for someone to make a decision to live a certain lifestyle. It's another thing to promote a lifestyle. And so we see Disney engaging in this action. And so we had the discussion. We looked at Walt Disney because there were rumors that he was a Freemason and started Disney, under Freemasonry type of deal. And so I debunked that myth because Walt Disney was not a Freemason. He did attend a leadership school for boys that's geared towards like teenagers to young men. And so he did attend that school, and that school was owned and run by a high-ranking member of the Freemasons. However, he did not become one. Even on the Jamal school, which is the name of it, a lot of the boys who attended that school or young men who attended that school went on to become Freemasons. He did not. Walt Disney was a Congregationalist, but he did credit a lot of his development to that time when he was at the school, and he was taught to be at that school. He was taught to respect other people's spiritual beliefs, and it was emphasized that people should have some type of spiritual belief. And so he himself was a Congregationalist and founded Walt Disney and believed in bringing joy and wholesome entertainment into the lives of people. Now we see that when it was dedicated, he had a Congregationalist pastor dedicate the land. And so he was his family said he was a person of faith. He believed in prayer, and he believed in the fact that the things that he was doing to establish Disney came from his prayer life or his time with God. And so here's the thing. And so we saw Disney kind of veer off into some different kind of spaces and some different kind of things that they do. Now, here is why I'm doing this follow-up, because I don't want to repeat the discussion that we had before. You can go to my website and check out the replay of the video portion of that discussion and the case study about the values of Disney and how they could be misapplied. The value of inclusion and not excluding people can be misapplied in their current course of action as they promote a certain agenda. Now, but here's why we're doing an update. Because recently, within the past couple of weeks, Bob Chapek, who was the CEO, was recently let go, and they rehired his predecessor, Bob Iger. Now, Bob Iger retired when he left Disney. He left Disney to go into retirement, and then after after that, Bob Chapek, who used to run the theme parks, took over as CEO. And now I didn't realize that there were campaigns and change.org petitions to have him fired because people felt like he didn't understand, the dynamic of Disney, and they felt like he was changing the DNA of the company. And so, but here's the statement that Walt Disney's board put out to the investors. Is on their website, and and it's on their it's just on their website. Is they put it out to everybody, but especially the investors. So it says on November 20th, which was 10 days ago, they announced that Bob Iger was returning to lead Disney as the CEO effective immediately. And so they didn't even give, him, a grace period. And they said that Bob Iger, who led the company, he spent more than 4 decades at the company, in 15 years he as the CEO, and he has a book out about called The Ride of a Lifetime and his lessons he learned as a CEO of Disney. And so they brought him back to serve as CEO for 2 years with a mandate from the board to set the strategic direction for renewed growth and to work closely with the board in developing a successor to lead the company at the completion of his term. So basically, they brought him in for 2 years to be strategic, to get the company to cause Disney to start growing again, and to groom a successor. Basically, they're saying that they weren't reading between the lines. They're saying they weren't happy with the previous leader, so they brought in someone else who used to lead before, and now they're shifting and they want him to provide mentorship to the next leader. Now, you guys know I talk about mentorship and how it's essential, and when you are building any type of organization, it's important to be mentored as well as to do the mentoring, so that when that leadership assignment is up, you can have someone in place that can step into the role of leading. Now, here's the thing: the successors should never try to imitate or duplicate what their predecessor has done, because that does not allow the leader to step into who they are as a leader. And so there's going to be a degree of shifting and changing whenever a successor steps into the role of being the primary leader and the old primary leader steps out into another function. And so there's always going to be that shift and transition and change. And with that shift, transition, and change, some people are going to buy into the new leader and some people are not, and they're going to leave because they're going to say it's too different. And so that's part of a dynamic. And so those of you who are in leadership positions, you want to recognize that if you are stepping into a role of an established business or a school or whatever the case may be, and now you're stepping in as the primary leader and people are resisting you, or take it personal, because it's just part of the dynamic that sometimes people are so familiar and so attached with the previous leader and the way things were, that they may not be ready mentally or emotionally to embrace change and step into under new leadership. But that's why it's important, when you are a successor stepping into something, that you begin to form your own relationships. You cannot base your leadership off of the relationships of the previous leader. I've had the opportunity of being a successor 2 different times in my career. One, I stepped into a school that was previously led by the previous principal, became the superintendent, and I stepped into the role of leading the school. And then another time I went to a school as an assistant principal and then became the principal. And in both scenarios, I had to build my own relationships. I could not depend upon a previous leader's relationship or even level of success. I had to build my own because leadership is about influence and influence is about building relationships. And so here's another statement that Disney made. They said the board has concluded that as Disney embarks on an increasingly complex period of industry transformation, Bob Iger is uniquely suited to lead the company through this pivotal period. So they're saying that the company is in such a pivotal moment that they felt the previous CEO didn't have the skill set to lead them through that transition. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And so that's very challenging. I'm sure it's very challenging for him to hear and upsetting, but it's one of those things where they are trying to position themselves to have the right leader for the right moment. Here's the next leadership point I want to make. As you are leading, you have to be able to recognize and discern pivotal moments and be able to lead and influence people and help them navigate through those moments successfully, not barely making it. And so you have to have the foresight to see them coming, and then you need to have the wisdom to create a strategy to navigate through those moments. And so those are just extra tips. And so now let's jump into what the leadership part or analyzing part of what potentially Bob Iger could be doing. Because here's the thing, just from the social political stance, we don't know how much of what they're doing is going to change. Because Bob Iger was very quick to speak out against Florida's bill, the parental, it was called the Parental Rights and Education Act. And so, even though Bob Iger wasn't the CEO, he was very quick to speak out against that bill because he said, and this is what he quoted, and he tweeted. He tweeted that the passing of the bill in Florida will put vulnerable young LGBTQ people in jeopardy, which I do not agree with. I don't agree with that statement. And so the Parental Rights and Education Act, just to give you a little background on it, as a former educator, I felt is definitely the right bill to pass because it bars educators from teaching about sexual orientation or gender identity to students in kindergarten through the third grade. Anything of that nature is not developmentally appropriate for kids that young. You're talking to somebody who was a pre-K through sixth grade principal for most of his career. Kindergarten, first and second and third grade, they're still learning sight words, words that you can't even sound out. Their third graders are still trying to learn how to handle the shift in education from to being able to comprehend what they read. In kindergarten, first and second grade, there's a little bit of reading comprehension, and they are learning the words and they're learning how to pronounce the words and read it. But now in third grade, the content really shifts and they have to read more informational text and they have to really, really gain a greater sense of comprehension of the text. And even in my state and other states, if they don't pass the state assessment in reading, there's a law that says they could technically be held back a grade for not reading because they say if a kid can't pass third grade reading, they won't be able to pass fifth grade math. And so there are so many other things that educators need to be dealing with. And I'm not on the standardized testing thing either, because as educators we all know that you cannot measure growth by one data point. It just doesn't happen. I mean, that's not good educational research, that's not good in theory or practice, but this is not that kind of discussion. And so I agree that is not grade level appropriate. And the law also said that leaders could, some district could opt to ban topics of sexual orientation beyond the third grade if the leaders deem the students not to be at the right age or developmentally appropriate. So that bill passed, and then Disney did what they did, speaking out. They got into a big argument with the government of Florida. They began to name the Parental Rights and Education Act. They called it the Don't Say Gay Bill and all of that, which that language is not even in the bill when you click and read the House bill. And so, but it's been very politicized by both political parties. And I'm not for either one. And I don't discuss politics, and I'm not taking political sides. I don't do that. But I'm just saying that this whole topic has been politicized by both political parties. But here's the thing I want to point out, that Bob Iger, he even though he wasn't a CEO, he was very much in support of that bill. Now, he basically stated that he felt like Disney has been telling stories for 100 years, and those stories have had meaningful and positive impact on the world. And one of those reasons that they could have that meaningful positive impact because of the core values of storytelling and inclusion and acceptance and tolerance. And I understand inclusion, acceptance, and tolerance. And a lot of people, try to lump in agendas under the name inclusion. And so as a leader, you have to be very careful with that. And you need to really identify what inclusion is. Leadership research will tell you that inclusion is when you allow all people, regardless of cultural or religious or other preferences, they allow them to have say so and allow their voices to be heard. Now, inclusion doesn't mean that you promote an agenda. It means that you allow them to be included and don't make them feel like they are not a part of the culture of your company, and so, or the place you're leading. But a lot of times, under the name of inclusion, people try to say, if you don't promote this agenda, or they don't say it, but silently they try to get you to promote an agenda under the name of inclusion, which is not the case. Because the same way, and I'm gonna use this example, the same way on Buzz Lightyear, they had two cartoon women kissing. In terms of inclusion, I don't see them including other beliefs and other groups like that. I don't see them having Christians being included in their cartoons. I don't see other things being included under the names of inclusion. And so the fact that they preferred one over the other shows that it's an agenda, it's not inclusion. And so I wanted to make that clear. And so, but he feels that that's a part of inclusion and felt like it wasn't a political statement. Now, I'm saying that to say that some of the twisted values that we see Disney operating under, that is not a part of their original intent, could remain. And so, and that's very important thing for us to watch. It's going to be a very important thing for us to see how that plays out. But here's the other thing that we want to look at, what's going on with Disney in terms of just basic leadership structure. We see that he let go of two CEOs right away. And so basically he let go of I'm trying to find it in my notes. He let go of the communication director. So a person who was Chapek's chief of staff, and then he was promoted to the vice president of strategic communications. That person was let go. And then another person named Kareem Daniel was also let go, who was responsible for the changes to Disney Plus. Now, we could theorize, or we could try to wonder why he did that, but we see that Disney's earnings didn't meet projections. And so he could be letting go of leaders whom he felt were responsible, or he could be letting go of leaders that he felt would not be in alignment with his vision. We don't know, but that could be what he's doing. Unfortunately, in corporate leadership, that's a thing. When a new CEO comes in, they start firing old CEOs and build their own team. And so that might not necessarily be the right strategy. It just all depends on the vision that he's trying to cast and the level of influence he has with the people in there. But the fact that Bob Iger only has 2 years, he probably didn't want to take a lot of time trying to build relationship with these CEOs and trying to coach them. He just figured it might be easier to replace them. I don't know. That's a guesstimation. This is just an opinion type of discussion. And so we know he did that. But we also know, which was announced, I believe, earlier today. Yes, it was, no, it was announced yesterday. So on November 29th, Disney also bought the national MLB, buys MLB stake in a streaming firm called BAMTech. And so they spent 900 million to buy the stake that was owned, the Major League Baseball's stake in the company BAMTech. Now, BAMTech is a video streaming firm. And so they had some of it already. They owned part of it already, but now they bought out the rest. Now, that could be strategic because, again, we business wise, there's a streaming war going on between Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu. Well, Hulu is owned by Disney and all of these other platforms. And so him buying that could be part of a strategy to get an advantage in the streaming arena. So that seems like, so we see him already trying to position Disney for growth through streaming. Now we also saw the leadership changes. We saw that he had Disney buy a part of this company. Now one of the things he did was he had an employee town hall, which is smart. Because when you step into a position as a leader, the first thing you need to do is you need to cast vision. You need to help squelch any concerns that the people may have about the direction of the company. And so he had a town hall meeting and he addressed a number of issues that they faced during his 2-year retirement. He talked about the bill and then Disney's response to that bill, but then he also talked about some other things. Now, one of the statements he made was he wants to quiet things down in terms of cultural and political controversies that had engulfed the company. And he told them that he wanted to have respect for the audience and no disdain of their views, which sounds good in theory, but we want to see how that plays out. It's one thing to want to respect a particular audience, but the question is, will he respect every audience? And will every audience speak up? Because if every audience doesn't speak up, he could be thinking that he's responding to the needs of his audience and customers, but he's really only responding to the loudest group and not every group. So we'll see how that part plays out. But then he also said that when someone asked him a question about staying out of making political statements, and he said he insisted there was a misconception about Disney and that some issues have been branded political and they weren't. Particularly the issue I just talked about with the bill. Bob Iger's opinion is that it's not political, that it's a matter of right and wrong. And so that was his opinion. But we know he is very close, and I won't say that online. I'll tell you guys something else that's in the VIP. And so he went on to say that he doesn't like the company being in controversy. He said it's a distraction, which is true, and can have a negative impact on the company, which is true. And so he's going to try to quiet things down to the best he can. Now that's a good strategy. He's stepping into a company that's right now in the middle or has been in the middle of controversy. And so, of course, he wants to back that company out of it and get them refocused, because the company has been so focused on fighting a social political battle that they haven't really been able to focus on their assignment. And so here's the next leadership strategy potentially is that you have to get the company or the place you're leading focused on the assignment and not on the other things that could take away from the assignment. Yes, you want to value everybody, but is your assignment to fight those battles or to fight battles that you don't necessarily agree with? And so you have to really be clear on the values of the place you're leading, as well as your own personal values, and you have to know what you should engage in and what you should not. And what's a misinterpretation? As we said during the first time we talked about it, could they be misinterpreting the values of the company and getting themselves into something that they shouldn't be into, which is what I believe they did. And so he began to talk about having a delicate balance of talking to the audience but also listening to the audience. And so here's the thing that I believe that needs to happen. Number one, we're going to watch this play out because I'm extremely interested in how this plays out, because we know Bob Iger is the guy that caused Disney's growth. When he was the CEO, he was very instrumental in them acquiring Pixar, which is the company that makes Toy Story movies and all of those other animated movies. He was instrumental in acquiring Marvel, which really caused Disney to really grow, because once he bought Marvel and the Marvel characters, and then he hired Kevin Feige, and Kevin Feige is like a genius when it comes to the Marvel movies and the MCU and all of that, and it's like boom, that aided their growth. So he was involved in that. He also was involved in them buying Lucasfilm, which owns Star Wars and all those other brands. And then he closed the deal to buy the majority, to give Disney the majority ownership in 21st Century Fox, the movie production company. But then also, because some of Marvel characters were leased out to Fox, that's caused Marvel to have those characters back and to be able to make movies using those characters. So that was also very strategic as well. And then he was the one who started the launch of Disney Plus. So he was very instrumental in the growth of Disney. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does that. But here's what I believe he's going to end up engaging in. Now, his specific strategy, I'm not going to speak on because I'm not in his head. I don't know. But I know he's going to engage in transformational leadership, or which the leadership research talks about Kozes and Posner, how they created a model for transformational leadership, and I believe that's the model he's going to engage in. And it identifies 5 practices of transformational leadership that makes that leadership exemplary. And so, of course, you guys know I talk about change leadership all the time, and how you have to, ignite the root, and how you have to, anticipate challenges, and how you have to ignite hope and joy and passion regardless of the particular thing that you're changing. So you guys know the model for change leadership that I teach, but this is also a part of it, because the Kozner and Posner model, based on leadership research, number one, they talk about modeling the way. They say leaders need to be clear about their own values and philosophy. Bob Iger has to be extremely clear about his values, as well as help make the values of Disney extremely clear. And there cannot be room of interpretation. There has to be an accurate interpretation of the company's values and what that looks like in today's culture. And then the next step is inspire a shared vision. And so he has to create a compelling vision that can guide the people's behavior. And he has to also listen to the dreams of the others and show them how their dreams can be realized through the fulfillment of the vision as a whole. So he's going to have to do that in order to engage in transformational leadership. He's going to have to also challenge the process, which means he's going to have to be a pioneer. He's going to have to be willing to take risks to make things better. He's going to have to be willing to change the status quo. And then the next thing is enable others to act. He's going to have to build trust with his leadership team, and then he's going to have to allow them to make choices, and he's going to have to support their decisions. And then the last step says he's going to have to encourage the heart, which is the last step of transformational leadership, where he has to encourage their hearts by rewarding them for their accomplishments, but also just really using authentic celebrations to show appreciation. And the research shows that high grit leaders that engage in more frequent role modeling and innovating behaviors, they produce more. And so I believe he's going to have to engage in transformational leadership. And, you guys know I talk about the rate of change and the pacing of change. I believe he's going to do things a lot quicker. I believe the pacing of change is going to be extremely fast because he only has a 2-year period. And within that 2-year period, he's going to have to groom and choose a successor. So that means he's going to have things in place already before he does his successor versus bringing the student in per se while trying to do all of these changes. He could take that approach, but I doubt it. I believe things may be moving so quickly that he's going to implement a lot of things very quickly and then bring the successor on. And so that's it for the video portion. I wanted to just talk about transformational leadership and really just have a different kind of discussion than I normally do. You guys know normally I'm sharing leadership tips on how you can lead transformation, how you can lead change, how you can use your gifts to operate in your leadership assignment. But I felt like tonight I just really wanted to do a follow-up, lighter discussion about what we see playing out with Disney, because I don't think it was happenstance that I did the case study and then talked about them potentially being away from their original values, and then the CEO at the time gets let go right after that, and now the previous CEO is back. And so it's going to be interesting to watch not just the leadership approach for growing Disney, but also the values part. Will he is the question. Will he align Disney back with Walt Disney's original values? Because remember, Walt Disney was about inclusion, but he didn't promote people's lifestyle choices. He didn't do that. And so, will Bob Iger make the environment where people can feel safe without promoting their values or agenda? And so that's the question that we will ask, that we will see and watch. Now, for those of you watching, and if you are engaging in change leadership, if you are in a spot where now you have to lead change, you're stepping into either a position as a successor because you've been given a leadership position and the previous person did whatever, you definitely want to get mentorship on how to lead change, how to build community, and how to connect with the people you're leading. Because people have to, one, be ready for change, and two, there's a sensitivity that you need to have regarding the pacing of change, because you hear me talk all the time that change has a pacing. And so you want to be clear on the pacing of change that you need to use. And your pacing has to be determined by the urgency of the change, the readiness of the people, as well as your own ability to facilitate it. And so if you need help with that, I want you to reach out to me. Get on my calendar so we can talk about your specific situation, and so you can get mentorship on how to lead change in your assignment. Now, for those of you you are definitely have to be called to leadership, and so I'm going to help you, one, recognize the calling of leadership and use all of your gifts to lead change. Because too often as leaders, I see leaders try to apply leadership strategy to lead change and go through steps like I just outlined for transformational leadership, but never think about the utilization of their gifting. And I want to help you use your gifts, because you're there for a reason, you're gifted for a reason, and the reason you're gifted is to enhance your leadership, and you're there as a leader to bring the change or the acceleration that place needs. So with that, I want you guys I'm going to end the video portion. I want you to be successful, and I want you to remember to always lead like a champion, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.